My second remark, I will try to refrain from using the phrase Gülen movement, because I think, theologically speaking, it is not a very good expression, because it draws attention to Mr. Gülen, and of course he deserves attention, but the final attention should be, on the one hand, to the type of work that people are doing, and therefore the Turkish term for the movement is the Hizmet movement, and I really prefer that term. Or you can also use, and that is Gülen's own proposal, the volunteers movement, vrijwilligersbeweging in Dutch. I think this is a good part for our discussion later, so I will leave it at that. So let me start off with my paper. It has two parts. The first part is what I call a discourse analysis. So I have tried to analyze the types of discourse in the works by Gülen, and the reason why I do so is I think that I want to analyze what exactly inspires the people in the Hizmet movement. That's my main question. So I will tell a little bit about that, and then I will talk about the types of sources, so the types of works by Gülen that inspire these people. That's the two parts of my lecture. So, regarding the discourse, there is a very good PhD by Pim Valkenberg. I believe he's from Albania, but he did his PhD in Germany, in Bonn, and he has written about the network structure of the Gülen movement. And in that book he also gives a discourse analysis, and he says you can see the discourse of Gülen in 4 concentrical circles. There is the smallest circle in the middle, and that's what he calls the Jemaat, the community of people who are inspired by Gülen. That's what you call the Alis, the older brothers in Turkish, the people who have learned his work and give it on to others. And within this small circle there's a specific type of discourse on what exactly their sources of inspiration are. And so that's the first circle. And then around that there is a second concentrical circle. It's the Muslim public in general that is addressed by Fethullah Gülen in his diverse works. And I will tell a little bit further on that it's primarily his oral works rather than his written works. In the third place, you have the Turkish public in general. Sometimes people call that the nationalistic discourse of Gülen. That's a little bit tricky. But okay, that is a level in which he addresses, let's say, what exactly is Turkish Islam and what's the specific place of Turkey as a kind of a bridge between the world of the Arabic world, the world of the Islamic heartlands, and the European and Western world, and then you have the universal language. So I think most of us in the West have come to know, as I personally did, Gülen through these most universal works. And being a theologian, my work has been to go back from these most universal to these core discourses and see where does he get it from. And for me that was very important. So my analysis, very short, is that there is a difference between what you can call esoteric and exoteric language. Now, the problem with the term esoteric is that many people see that as kind of negative. I try to not do that because I think esoteric just means it functions within a specific community. And I think what I have talked about, these first 2 levels that I have just distinguished, the level of the Jemaat and the level of the Muslim public address, that is this esoteric language. One of the most important things in this esoteric language is that it presupposes quite a good knowledge of Islam. So if you're not a Muslim, or if you don't have that knowledge, you will not exactly understand what he refers to, because he will not say it explicitly. I think that's also true in other forms of esoteric language. You have a kind of a common source that you always refer to, like Christians refer to the Bible, and they don't need to say, okay, this is from Luke and this is from the letter to the Ephesians, because most people will know that, or at least used to know that. I'm no longer sure if that's the case now. And then you have the more exoteric language, that is the general language that does not presuppose that type of sources. Now, you can of course ask, okay, why take this trouble? Why take the trouble of this analysis of types of discourse? Well, the reason why I did it, because for me it explains what is sometimes called a double agenda. You will maybe have heard some of the problems with the press in the Netherlands, that people, and not only in the Netherlands because it comes from Turkey, people say, well, Gülen has a double agenda. He seems to be very open, very liberal, very universal, but in the core he wants to introduce the Sharia. And I think that has to do with the fact that people cannot see how this exoteric and esoteric language functions, because of course for Gülen the religious language is the core of what he wants to say, but he addresses different publics, and therefore he uses different strands or different levels of discourse to do that. So I think that helps us to understand why people sometimes think that Gülen has this double agenda, and that even the Gülen movement has a kind of a double agenda, which I think is very important. Also here in the Netherlands, you may remember the Nova television broadcast some time ago about it. Okay. Now, Agai says, coming back to this discourse analysis, that there has been a movement, a development in Gülen from this more esoteric towards more exoteric language. And for a time I have agreed with that. But I think it's not entirely true. It does not do justice to the complexity of Gülen's discourse. And I have two reasons for that. The one is I have interviewed, thanks to Alper Alassa, last year some of Gülen's early students in Izmir. And they told me that this universal language and this universal interest has been with Gülen from the very beginning. So he went to the coffee houses and he talked, and you know Izmir was the most secular city in Turkey. So in that sense it's kind of a parallel to Amsterdam. And what Gülen there did in the coffee houses is kind of parallel, for those of you who know, to what Father Jan van Kilston, another Jesuit, did here in Amsterdam. He went to the pubs and he talked with the students, because he said we have to go to where the students are and see what their questions are. Well, that's exactly what Gülen did in Izmir in 1966. So it was there from the beginning. And if you look at his present day discourse, his new internet texts, you will see there is this universal language, but there is also a very Sufi kind of pious language. For instance, if he talks about the birthday of the Prophet, it's a very mystical language, which is really hard to understand if you don't know this Sufi terminology. So I think it has been there all along, and it functions in Gülen's language next to one another, these different languages.